Hello, the species value nature system. This is to teach you not science isolated from each other. They share an identity with the NAS. The value of each, for example, as metaphysics, slandered, reduced to name-dropping, delusion propagation roles since some ancient times, shamans, all changes here. You see, this is bodies of value with a radical inherent to the nature of each identity of value, as a group's nature too, as a species. We have two eyes, we have sexes and demonstration of the shared body of value and its nature relationship to itself, its value nature relationship to itself as a system, as the system of the identity of space's body, as ours has an identity and demonstration to this. See, the Trinity manifest with the nature as the nature of the cell nucleus, the cell body, and the cell wall, and how they connect. So, like a circle with like two dots drawn in the middle of it. Imagine, and then the body of the cell around it, and those cell walls connect to each other. For example, with chloroplast, if you take what they call transverse, like just a thin slice, a transverse section of a tomato, put it on a magnifying glass, because it's almost transparent, you can see how the cells connect to each other. The same chloroplast takes up a stronger form with the wall. We know this. Together we can move more weight and things like that. But we have to understand that positive will only keep a positive relationship to itself. There is no such thing as negative value nature to it. English is revealed to teach this as an identity the science share. And so as a correlation nature in relationship to how identity was and is beyond each body of value, and did as nature. For example, that's why Latin laws were revealed manifest with English that was criminally re-engineered to hide what only realized predatory litigation nature, breaching nature roles, realized through only realized criminally re-engineered sciences. And so revelations. The religions are about an organized crime method against fact treatment nature. For example, worse than sabotaging our means and needs as a correlation nature to pursue ratiocination and to pursue the surface values of the Constitution, defend it for our own safety, as a not as an enslaved fact treatment nature, forced, slandered, and databases if they try to mention it. Nations were not criminally legalized to do that, to be systemic, agencies too, recorded fully and confessed fully, communicated fully, hiding life progressions from themselves, hiding areas cultivated, criminal life progression, cover up natures and roles, personally, misprision, and top-down only realized. For an originally state, progressed, inherently, actively, and progressively, crime method against, breaching method against fact treatment nature. This was inter-science here entrenched in Connecticut since before the birth of our founders. This is why George Washington and the French general had to unite to counter-extort, or had them counter-extorted everywhere. And with slavery as a tactic, while they were forcing the extortion of England as the face that was forced to be here too, and not allowed to tell how there was forced shared markets positions that were being forced shared as a fact treatment nature slavery and torture method. So that's an organized crime method that has nothing to do with the rights that nations inherited to lie for needs in relationship to terrors, also as an integrity incapable of countering it, each nation at once, fake maturity, hurt conviction natures, delusion propagation natures, styles that are only different as a same predatory negative value nature, fact treatment nature, preventing the demonstration of them needing to hide lies, delusions, criminal persuasions, internation persuasions in criminal areas maintained, cultivated, lie progression, cover-up natures and roles, utilized for breaching method. That's how serious it is. Not letting the radical of correlation, why we have two eyes, demonstrated. All things demonstrate this. Why we have sexes. A radical correlation as what? As positive or negative relationship to itself, inherently, actively, and progressively. Inherently and progressively. The identity of space will only stay. The identity of the value of the identity of a person, of space, too, first, and as this value, will only stay positive unto itself. The phenomena of temporary bodies of value are manifest with and as, are inherently, actively, and progressively forged value nature relationship to positive self, which will only keep either with negative value nature to us in other words, there is no negative value nature to it. Negative value nature is only positive as temporary value nature because it's expanding the perfection of itself. In other words, if we're it's complete memory of what we are memory of, as its nature coming through us with the expansion of our identity. So we are to the expansion, to progressive value of it here, or we are of progressive value to it as a negative value nature that is semi-nature, that it becomes inherently, actively, and progressively worse to be that because you're already forged. That's where hell came from. This is science, though. This is where lethal hadiths came from. It's positive's relationship to itself as an identity of value, as a radical, either present, so the yin-yang goes here, or doesn't. You see? And every part of this is a diacritical marking. The period. The pupils of our eyes are two diacritical markings of what is positive only as a semi-positive, as the value of the nature of consciousness. Because the complete integrity of forever nature can only come through temporary value nature, progressively here, through correlation, through two and then that realizes ourselves as what is inherently, actively, and progressively positive to itself, even though it's coming through what is also could be negative value nature. Because to it, that's why once it goes, the bond to matter, that bond to matter is a nature that will only stay positive unto itself as the body of value coming through all space, as our identity is in a body of value coming through all physical space nature of our body. We are space nature. English is about teaching space nature, each as a body of value. Each body of physical value, like the cells, has a nature on both sides of it. We are polarity nature. And so, not only Latin laws are needed, like habeas corpus, habeas certiorari, I'm not a lawyer, but laws for people who are in prison wrongfully to be able to write their way out of that. But see, if they don't have other laws that make them be able to demonstrate tricks, not letting them do that properly from inside there, then we're still not free. It's also demonstrated, recorded, tied to the physical delusion propagations are worse, tied to radical, our agencies originally and stayed, all nations foreshared as a pseudo-sophistication predatory comparison nature, incapable of speaking for the law, as they only let realize standing natures of it, and with those with opinions personal and formal, not let demonstrated, criminally influenced, needing to hide lies, delusions, and premises, and criminal intonation persuasions recorded fully and confessed fully. Don't even need to have any kind of. That's how metaphysics it is. In other words, at the same time with colonization, where all the colonists and the Native Americans, critically, because truth is a sequenced nature, and if you forsake them as a nature, you are a criminal and citizeness nature as made, as victim predator, complete predator in relationship to the justifications of what cultivates motivations for this to be not realized, and real cause of negative value nature progressions be blamed on other. In other words, there is a value of immediate space losing itself to overall its value nature space, because we're not positive to its overall system. So we're a cancer spreading out lethal hadiths, forced negative value nature relationship to its own identity of value, positive. So we're going to examine how the subject is an identity of value that is clear by itself, a clear value, a clear identity of value, but it can't be discerned but through correlation nature. It's a relationship to, which is a main verb. And we'll examine how the main verb loses its identity of value as a verb, becomes a participle nature or an infinitive nature. And as that could be used as a subject, it could be used as an adjective, like running. Now, running is no longer a verb. Start running. Now, start is a verb, the main verb predicate, and running is a subject, or the direct object. It's also a subject there. See? We have to understand English was revealed to teach nature, a fact treatment nature, that uses correlation. In other words, understanding what the radical relationship that positive has to itself, with as identities of value, clear value, the value of clear space, no matter where it is, especially when within as an animated value of a human body, altogether, as sexes, and demonstration of the nature of a Trinity, and of its value-nature relationship to itself, as also demonstrated by the rest of nature with no criminal persuasions, especially since some ancient times. This reminds the nature campus. So this forced, because of the way it's forced space nature, tactical to areas, it cultivated criminal insidiousness natures consciously, with them not realizing as Oz, because that then it was going to cultivate other motivations and means to leverage internation sciences perpetually with a minority with roles through them as victim predator tools. In other words, self-maintained breaching nature nations, states, and areas of nations only let realize predatory comparison natures. Predators against correlation. That means truth that is not used as a weapon as a lie, which is, in other words, and we're not being allowed to demonstrate the inherent, the finite proofs and the overall ones. At the same time, we're not being allowed, we're being forced to pretend that things are opinions, that we have recorded mentally ill people, sick pathologically together, misprision, pathologically, with healthcare, intermilitary, internation, and with prisons, and with them torturing, fully, completely recorded, delusion propagating and doing worse in rackets with the same people they're hurting as prisoners. Recorded with online crimes with them before that. Inter-online platform natures of organized crime with areas being facilitated and being covered up by online policings and by their very nature. Interbranch, internation. And it's not for legal reasons. It's not for the reasons they tell them. Maybe they have to hide policing of the markets together. Crazy markets positions with crazy fake stability. With no bottom even admitted. Not by accident. Because then you admit the bottom, then all fights just become about how to go evolution faster. That requires radical correlation. So we need to paint our way out and admitting all the space value nature impositions. We take this not as these are also all kinds of fact treatment ills with treatments of communism and capitalism in relationship to suit and tie, also demonstrably as Oz unrealized, like kings forced to roles, with rackets through our natures, to all podiums, to all fact treatment. We only have, in other words, Facebook. They just block posts, hide and lie, and stack databases with lies against innocent people. Evidences crimes, all different natures of juxtaposed crime. Then they have people, because all kinds of groups connected socially too, with and as interbranch cliques. Interscience, especially with medical corruption tied to psychology. Real ill with each age of fact treatment nature, distinctly together and with areas and intercampus, not by accident. And with the database relationships originally progressed before there were computers. That's what slavery was one of many crazy laws that were to the fact treatment nature, slavery and extortion of our founders. Wanted and needed and told. It's recorded. But you can't tell about that using correlation and using what is only true always, with only that realized standing glorifications of them in extorted states forced to, as the theater that was forcing that everyone that rolls with it, so they could see who was trying to counter it if everyone, when they would. Because colonization was engineered to stay dissolved, functional, to a long-term fact treatment nature breaching method to all areas of all nations of species, fake sites, fake news. It's very serious with the radical of correlation because it's multi-front. Predatory fact treatment nature is all bridged with our original course, stay not let, through losses. It takes a revolution to win a revolution, not a war. That's why George Washington had, in the French general, had to leave the slavery insidiously and methodically entrenched in the North, and not with them not being able to tell about it. Even after the Constitutional Convention, they had to hide the rules. Hide it. You have to stay. What they forced only let realize made multi-front, predatory, life progression cover-up natures leaning down each other, blaming it on all else. That's what the nature of the motivations were for what did that. In other words, the people who took part of it didn't even understand it themselves. Even the people who understood it as agencies. In other words, the African agencies and the European agencies that finished what they did to Native Americans, taking them away from their memory of their roles with and as the republic for which we stand, which is revealed by a nature of sciences that was internation before criminal re-engineering of human fact treatment nature through the education. So we'll examine proofs, recorded proofs, that the Native Americans were once part of the ancient republic. They knew that the world was round, consciously teaching that the world was flat, consciously teaching that pantheism was about many gods. and to obfuscate how it was really about radical correlation, using God as a concept that we're inherently, actively, and progressively not sure about. Trying to figure out the identity of space, which is Allah. And this is what we need statutes, not that bring more, not that has nothing to do with the other part of the Quran. That has the controversial parts. That's in relationship to the extortion of the king. Through our nation's shared areas, only let realized, motivated, and hurt, inherently, actively, and progressively predatory fact treatment natures. As identities of value that can't help not understanding being Oz as sophistication, as the only sophistication roles with what also was his multi-front bottom-up opinion issues that they don't understand, a means to counter. Because the sciences were made as this, to functions by this. We have people, and it's tactically invested to breach the educational convictions, delusion propagations, inter-science, fact treatment ills that are pretended believed by nature's with and as a standing criminal insidiousness nature together. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a criminal. So we're going to examine the predicate act, which is revealed by the ancients demonstrably before. Now, agencies of integrity and branches of integrity incapable of describing. And so the space nature system will keep demonstrating negative value nature progressions, not evolution. When we are this identity that is admitting it, then all bottoms are already here. They're locked down. And now we're going to figure out with and as the game we want our nature. So who gets jealous? Because we're going to force bottom-up evolution. And then who gets jealous of that? And while we're doing this, we're going to be realizing means too, because we have to understand the way we were tactically forced to a denatured relationship with zoning laws and denatured means and denatured fact treatment nature, never free originally state. Relationship, the only proofs are the proofs always, not opinions. See, this is also required demonstrating recorded proofs that our opinions are being forced multi-front by nature's only let realized as fact treatment natures needing to be fact treatment acts and styles. Life progression cover-up natures only let realized trained on charge like that because of how it was and is all at once. So all these abridged styles are just illusions needing to tell themselves and others lies, hiding, pretending passions in relationship to directed morality that was as predatory. In other words, the nature of the law has never been let voice. And not just that, but tactically, and not just that, with them in all positions as Oz. How are kings Oz? Because they're forced to entertain ulterior from actual value, space nature value system, invested into it with sick bottom threats, as a sick bottom denatured nations forced to ignore this and pretend with suit and tie and or with the religious dresses, forced the difference because we're supposed to be able to see this, radical to correlation. Now, you see, this is catching value coming left to right. At the same time, a nature is coming right to left. Allah's nature, but that's out of our control. As the nature, just like our body's temperature needs are out of control, beyond our control. Everything is in demonstration of the same course. That's why birds, animals, they have two eyes. The radical of correlation. That is as its own nature of value, that is inherently and progressively only going to stay progressively value to itself, only going to stay inherently progressive value to itself. So now when we come to the temporary space nature, our value is either positive and so progressed here, where it is forged, and or it's negative, which is forced from here because we're no longer the identity and the nature of radical correlation, which requires trying to discern positive as an identity of value, not just as a identity, because there's also positive that's negative value nature. To be nature, you have to be positive, but negative value nature is negative onto its own identity of value. So we have our fact treatment nature told to be a fake sophistication, and what needs that was also simultaneously hurt and maintained hurt. Each age of fact treatment nature distinctly grouped and together and with areas. And this, in other words, this was a method that knew that it could cause negative value nature progressions, that it could also invest to natures only capable of, and being perpetually criminally influenced to blame it on other, only being capable of not as us victim predators. A fact treatment nature, because that's where the ancients understood about our fact treatment nature and about identity of value, the one shared by all parts of our body. So that's why the three parts are only manifest, also manifest touching each other, also manifest with systems, also manifest with organs, sharing a sequence nature, sharing what is positive onto each body of cell, also positive onto the rest of the cell sequence, distinct sequences on the same thing. We are our system by a value nature relationship